Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. It's so great to have you here. Thank you to all my new subscribers. If you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It makes such a difference to getting my videos out to more people. And if you have any questions or comments, don't forget to post them below. Give me a thumbs up. Just as a quick point on that though, quick reminder, I can't answer specific questions about your voice without hearing and seeing you. So if you want personal feedback, support, guidance, help, please book a private session with me. You can book a taster session below for an hour where I can absolutely help you with your voice. If you want more support and you are interested in my 8-week private voice coaching program, then you can also book a voice discovery call below. But there are many ways I can actually support you, so you don't need to suffer in silence by yourself. So let's talk about today's topic, which is all about storytelling and why it is such an important skill to develop as a public speaker. Now, you don't need to be standing on TEDx stages to develop this skill. It doesn't matter if you manage a small team or you have your own business. Being able to share stories in a very coherent, purposeful way is absolutely essential. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to share a little challenge for you if you would like to partake. So we have been sharing stories as humans for around 30,000 years. So what started off as visual stories through rock art and paintings, then moved into oral communication through chanting and songs and prayer and rhymes. And then, relatively speaking, more recently, stories in the written form. And I'm sure we've all got our favorite authors of people that really bring words to life in the written form. But we've also now got another layer to this with social media. More and more people listen to audiobooks. Podcasts are massively popular now as well. And of course, there's the videos on YouTube. So there's so many ways now we can share stories with other people. And stories are essentially universal in the human experience, in the human condition. We love stories. It doesn't matter where you're from in the world. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, religion, doesn't matter. We all love stories. So it really does bond us, bind us together, really reminds us actually we're more similar than we are different. I love what Brené Brown talks about. She says stories are data with a soul, because what we're really doing is we're connecting the hearts and minds of our audience. And that's why they're so powerful, because you instantly connect to that person. When you resonate with that story, you see yourself in that person. It conjures up that emotion within you. So I'm specifically doing my videos here for people, professionals in their business or career. So my challenge for you is, can you start to bring stories into your day-to-day business or career? So whether you're in a business meeting, sharing a story behind your company, behind your product or service. If you're in a job interview, can you share a story about your personal brand, your personal journey? If you're in a pitch, can you share a story about why you chose to develop this product or create this service or this idea that you have? Because you're going to get far more engagement from an audience through storytelling than just a bunch of facts and figures and data. That's not to say that's not important, but we want to bring it to life. We want to connect to the humanness of the people in the room. So I just want to talk quickly. I've kind of mentioned them, but 3 of the main reasons why you want to start to open your mind a little bit to bringing storytelling into your day-to-day life. So whether you run your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, whether you have a team, whether you work within a large organization, there are ways that you can bring storytelling into your day-to-day life in a more purposeful way. So as I mentioned, connection is absolutely huge. It is so much easier to engage an audience through story than just showing them a whole load of facts and figures. And part of the reason for this is the emotional connection. and also the kind of relatability, because when we share a story about something in our past, our life, our challenges, this is how we really engage an audience when they feel connected to us, versus if we just blast them with facts, figures, and data. If we can bring the humanness into our presentation, into our training, into our coaching event, whatever it is we're doing, it reminds the people in the audience that they're not alone, that we're all one, actually, which is the truth, but we really do see ourselves as separate. And so when someone shares a story about something that they've struggled with, or that they had an embarrassing situation, it instantly connects people, because we suddenly feel less weird, alone, different. We're like, oh, well, that person struggled with that. That makes me feel better. So it's an instant way of connecting the humanness within us all, and also really evoking that emotion in people as well. So I'm sure you know within yourself, when you hear the story behind something, it instantly kind of elevates it for you than if you just see a product or a service out there. But then when you find out about the story behind it, suddenly it takes on a whole other level. Connection is absolutely essential. I can't overemphasize this one enough. So number 2 is context, because actually when we share stories, we really can then illustrate a point in a far more powerful way. We can put some context behind it. We can give an example, a very concrete example, in a way that perhaps people can understand a lot better than if we just give them facts and figures. And using this as a segue for this example, I mean, I'm a songwriter as well as a voice coach. I also write my own music and I sing. I have music out there on Spotify if you're interested. And one of the big challenges for me has been, which kind of sounds crazy, because songwriting is storytelling. And I write very, very, very personal, emotional songs. And you do feel very vulnerable because you're bearing your soul when you write music. And it's not just the music that I'm writing, I'm also singing it and I'm playing the piano. So the whole of me is involved in all of my music. And I remember people saying to me, but people want to know why you wrote that song. And when I would do live shows, like, you need to talk between the songs more about why you wrote this song or what this song is about, because that's actually what people want to know. Yeah, the song is nice, the song's great, the song's powerful. But when I then started to get braver and more courageous about sharing what the song was actually about and giving it some context, it actually helped me to connect with the audience a lot more. And for those of you that don't know, I mean, I wrote a lot of my music about the loss of my parents, and really raw, really personal, very, very emotional. And I did feel kind of uncomfortable and sort of embarrassed about how emotional I would get over it. But I realized that that was the missing piece, because that's what people want to know. So I'm using this, I share this because I know how vulnerable, how challenging it can be to really share something very personal. But I promise you, it is the easiest, quickest way to connect to other people. So number 3 is memorability. Now, we're far more likely to remember facts, figures, information, data, fill in the blank, when it's put into a story or an idea. If it's put into a story, than if we're just given a whole list of facts and figures. So it really helps us to connect on that deeper level, but it also helps us to remember things. Now, obviously, you know, and I'm sure we've all been there, stories get sort of morphed as they move between people, but essentially we generally remember the gist of something a lot more when there is a story attached to it. So of course, from my perspective, sharing stories requires the voice. It sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but it requires us to be brave in how we use our voice. So in recent months, I've been working with a lot of authors who write their own books, and they're working with me because they're suddenly sort of flung out into the world on book tours, and they have to start actually reading their stories aloud. And they're not used to it. They, as one of the authors I was working with said, you know, I spend most of my days sitting on my own in a room writing my book. I'm not used to them being flung out into various audiences at festivals, book launches, bookstores, and actually sharing my stories with people using my voice. So it became very apparent to me that, you know, it is a skill, and you have to be willing to allow all the colors of your voice to come through and access all the dynamics, all the expression, because that's really what's going to bring your words to life. So whether you actually are an author and you write stories, you write poetry, you write your own content, or whether you are in a business or career where you are selling a service or a product or an idea, it doesn't matter. The voice is still absolutely essential and integral to that. What we want to avoid then is, of course, rambling, which I think can be very common with storytelling. Sometimes we go off on a ramble. We don't really have a point to the story. There's no purpose. It's not particularly concise. It's not particularly coherent. So we want to have a very clear beginning, middle, and end, and a very clear purpose. Why am I actually sharing this story? Very, very important. But then it's really about being willing to open up your voice. So allowing your voice to emerge, allowing the colors of your voice to come through. And by that, I mean variety in the voice, whether it's through pitch or volume or pauses or dynamics or expression. Like, can I use my voice as a tool to enhance the words of my story? And sometimes you might want to speed up, sometimes you might want to slow down, sometimes you might want to be loud or quiet, sometimes you might want to vary the pitch. But do I have the skill to be able to access that? And am I also then willing to do it? Because that's another thing. So my challenge to you now is see if you can start practicing telling stories. You want to sort of think about maybe 2 or 3 stories that you could share in a business meeting or a pitch, or on stage if you had to deliver a keynote, some stories that actually you think would be of interest and also have a purpose for what you're doing. And then just start to get comfortable in a very conversational way sharing your story. So you want it to have a beginning, middle, and end. You want to make sure you're not rambling. You want to try and bring in as much variety in your voice as possible. And the only way to really know what you're doing, and I say this all the time, but it always amazes me people still don't do it, is to record yourself and listen back. Because you may think that you're intonating, or you're speaking slower or speaking faster or increasing the volume, but actually when you listen back, it kind of sounds a bit monotone and a bit bleh. So the only way to really know is to record yourself and listen back, and get used to telling the story or stories. Get used to, in a very conversational way, in a very authentic way, sharing the stories, remembering that the true voice is expressive. So people will say to me, oh, but I don't speak very expressively. That's because you're hiding behind your voice. So allow that expression to come out. You can really use your voice as if you were like the painter with the color palette in front of you. Really start to see your voice as that color palette. So you have access to all the colors, the range, the pace, the pauses, the volume, the expression, the intonation, the dynamics, all of that. And you really want to start to play around with it. So get comfortable. Listen to yourself. Just make sure you're not rambling, you're going off in a tangent. Try and keep it contained, have a very clear ending to the story, and play around with variety in your voice. And if you're not sure, I've got lots and lots of videos on volume, on pace, on pauses, on all of that kind of thing. If you're not sure what to do, I won't put it in this video now, but just start to get comfortable with variety in your voice. Listen back, because honestly, you will not know if you're just going by what you hear in your head. So you really, really do need to record it and listen back. So I hope that that has been helpful. And I hope that I'll get a few comments below that people have actually tried and done some practice and some practice recordings. If this is something that you're interested in exploring, if you are an author, as I said, I've been working with a few authors recently, or you want to start doing more public speaking and sharing stories, and you feel like your voice lacks that expression and dynamics, again, all the links are below. Book a session. Let's work through this together, because when we've been using our voice in a particular way our whole life, We don't even know what we're doing. We can't hear stuff in our voice. We can't feel stuff in our voice. And I can really help you to start to awaken to what's actually possible and what's actually already there. It just needs to be revealed and reclaimed. So thank you so much. And I will see you next week on my next video.